No one inside the palace expected the moment to arrive so suddenly. As thousands waited for the official royal procession to begin, a single decision stunned everyone watching. Instead of Queen Camilla taking her traditional place beside King Charles, Princess Anne stepped forward without hesitation. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Palace officials froze, and within seconds, the carefully planned ceremony became one of the most astonishing royal moments in recent memory. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne did not pause. She moved into position beside Charles, as if prepared for the responsibility all along, while the king kept his face steady and his pace controlled. An official royal procession is a formal public journey in which senior family members appear in a fixed order, and the place beside the monarch carries more than ceremonial value. It signals confidence, closeness, and authority. That was why her presence mattered. Princess Anne had officially replaced Camilla beside the king after a last-minute palace decision, and every step announced that change before any statement could explain it. Camilla stood motionless as the order became clear. She did not protest, but her hands tightened and her expression hardened as aides avoided her eyes. The queen consort understood the humiliation instantly. This was not merely a changed walking position. It was a public withdrawal of trust when the monarchy depended on unity. Charles felt that same danger. He knew the crowd would read his sister's place as approval, protection, and perhaps a warning that the crown had chosen duty over comfort. Nervous glances moved between palace staff only minutes after sealed instructions reached the procession team. Those instructions, a private written order distributed to authorized officials, had arrived too late for discussion and too precisely for accident. One senior courtier, speaking through a documented palace account prepared after the ceremony, confirmed that the switch had been decided hours earlier behind closed doors. The revelation changed everything. Anne had not stepped forward because of confusion. She had been placed there deliberately. Charles continued walking, yet the weight of the decision followed him. Camilla remained behind, fighting to protect her dignity, as cheers grew louder around the woman who had taken her place. Anne carried the moment with resolve, but she understood its cost. One procession had redrawn the emotional map of the family, and those closest to the throne were about to discover how deep the damage truly ran. But the public only witnessed a few unforgettable minutes. Behind that walk stood years of loyalty, rivalry, and painful choices waiting to be uncovered. One ceremonial walk revealed far more than changing positions. It exposed hidden emotions that no carefully rehearsed royal smile could conceal. Behind every measured step stood people carrying decades of duty, pride, disappointment, and sacrifice. What appeared to be a simple rearrangement became a deeply personal reckoning for everyone closest to the throne. Anne had spent a lifetime proving that duty was not a slogan, but a discipline. She arrived early, stayed late, and carried out difficult engagements without complaint, which was why courtiers often called her the monarchy's most dependable working royal. A working royal is a family member who performs official duties on behalf of the crown, and her record mattered because stability depends on people who can be trusted when plans collapse. Charles knew that. Before the procession, he leaned toward his sister and quietly thanked her, his voice carrying relief, sadness, and the weight of a choice he could not take back. Camilla felt the loss differently. Her place beside the king had come to represent partnership, recognition, and the public image of their reign. Losing that position in front of the nation did not simply change the order of a ceremony, it suggested that confidence around her role had weakened at the most visible level. Later, she sat alone inside a palace drawing room and slowly removed her gloves, one finger at a time. The queen consort said nothing, yet the silence revealed how deeply the decision had wounded her. William noticed the tension before anyone explained it. Senior aides avoided direct answers, papers changed hands too quickly, and one private secretary closed a folder the moment the prince entered. He understood that this was larger than ceremony, because royal order is rarely altered without a serious reason. Catherine saw it too. She watched Charles thank Anne, then noticed Camilla withdraw from the room without speaking. The princess sensed that the family's internal balance had shifted, and she knew such changes always carried consequences for the future. Charles tried to hold the family together while appearing calm in public. Anne remained steady, but she could feel the discomfort around her. Camilla carried humiliation behind closed doors, while William and Catherine began measuring every word and glance. 4 royals had entered the day with familiar roles. By evening, none of those roles felt secure. One question now moved through every corridor. What happened before the procession that forced the king to make such an extraordinary choice? And the answer would expose a confrontation no managed palace statement could ever fully conceal. To understand the replacement, the story must return to one private meeting that quietly changed the course of the monarchy. Royal history rarely changes in public. It changes inside silent rooms where only a handful of voices are heard. Days before the procession, one conversation ended without raised voices. Yet everyone who walked out understood that nothing would ever return to the way it had been. That meeting became the moment palace insiders would later remember as the beginning of everything. Charles entered the final rehearsal carrying weeks of pressure. Public confidence had become the palace's concern, because every appearance now served as proof that the family remained united and the crown remained steady. A ceremonial order is the planned position in which royals stand, walk, or travel during an official event, and changing it could signal a shift in trust. The king understood that one wrong move would not stay private, it would be read as weakness. Camilla had grown frustrated by revisions to her public role. She believed the changes made her appear uncertain beside her husband, while senior officials argued that the procession needed a figure associated with discipline and calm. The queen consort felt cornered. Charles felt divided. Personal loyalty pulled him toward the woman who had stood beside him for years, but institutional responsibility demanded that he protect the monarchy's image before protecting anyone's pride. Anne watched her brother hesitate over the revised program. She did not push at first, but the silence around him became unbearable. The princess finally told him, in a recorded conversation preserved in the rehearsal account, that the crown could not survive if every difficult decision was softened to spare one person's feelings. Her words were not cruel. They were direct, and that made them harder to ignore. Camilla then challenged the revised ceremonial order in front of senior officials at Buckingham Palace. She asked why Anne had been moved closer to the king and demanded that the original arrangement be restored. No one answered. One aide lowered his eyes. Another closed the program folder. Charles looked across the room and understood that the disagreement had crossed a line. What had been private tension was now open resistance. That silence became the trigger. The king ended the rehearsal, asked everyone except his sister to leave, and remained behind with Anne. Minutes later, he authorized the change that would place her beside him during the procession. The decision was calm, but its meaning was brutal. Camilla had forced the question into the open, and Charles had answered it. By the time the rehearsal room emptied, the family's balance had shifted. The public had not seen the rupture, but the consequences were waiting. Once the crowds disappeared, the most difficult conversation of the entire day finally began. Palace walls have witnessed countless royal disagreements, but few carried the emotional weight of what happened after the procession. No cameras followed them inside. No cheering crowds remained, only silence, disappointment, and years of complicated relationships filled the room where 2 lives, and perhaps the future of the monarchy, collided face to face. Charles closed the door after asking Camilla to join him alone. No aides entered, no private secretary remained to soften what either of them might say. The room became a place of personal truth, not palace strategy, and that mattered because every public decision now carried consequences for their marriage as well as the crown. Anne waited outside, refusing to intrude, yet fully aware that the next few minutes could decide whether the family moved toward repair or deeper division. Camilla did not waste time. She asked why she had been replaced without warning, and why her husband had allowed the nation to see the decision before she heard it from him. The queen consort kept her voice controlled, but anger pushed through every sentence. Charles listened without interruption. The king then told her that public confidence had become more important than personal comfort, because the monarchy could not ask the country for trust while appearing uncertain within its own ranks. The words struck harder than accusation. Camilla asked whether Anne had demanded the place beside him. Charles answered that his sister had accepted only after he requested her support. He explained that the position was not a reward but a shield, a way to steady the procession after the rehearsal exposed conflict in front of senior officials. The monarch's honesty did not calm her. It made the humiliation feel deliberate. Anne entered only when Charles called her inside. She faced Camilla directly and promised that she had no wish to replace her permanently. The princess said her role was to support the king during a moment of danger, not seize another woman's standing. Camilla stared back, searching for insult or triumph, but found neither. That quiet dignity left her with no enemy she could openly blame. Silence took control. Camilla removed her gloves, placed them beside the chair, and walked toward the door without answering. Charles watched her leave, while Anne remained beside him, troubled rather than victorious. Yet one detail refused to disappear. The king had not reached this decision alone. Somewhere behind the official order stood another voice, another warning, and perhaps another royal whose influence had been carefully hidden. That hidden pressure would soon expose how far palace loyalties had shifted beneath the ceremony. The question was no longer who walked beside the king, but who truly shaped the decision itself. Power inside the monarchy rarely belongs to the loudest voice. Sometimes it belongs to the person willing to carry the greatest burden without asking for recognition. As attention focused on Anne's unexpected appearance, another truth quietly emerged. This decision had never been about ceremony alone. It was about preserving something much larger than any individual. Charles felt that burden before anyone spoke to him. Family loyalty pulled in one direction, while the survival of the institution pulled in another. The crown is the monarchy as a continuing institution, larger than the person wearing it, and that distinction mattered, because every private choice could weaken national trust. The king understood that protecting one relationship might damage the structure he had sworn to defend. Anne carried the opposite kind of weight. She had built her reputation by accepting difficult work without demanding praise. And people trusted her because she rarely treated duty as performance. The princess did not see the procession as a victory. She saw it as a task no one else could safely perform. Her calm protected Charles in public, but it also placed her inside a conflict she had spent years trying to avoid. William found her and spoke without advisors present. He told Anne that he admired the sacrifice she had accepted, because stepping beside the monarch meant taking responsibility for both the applause and the anger. The prince knew that public approval could strengthen the family, but it could also deepen Camilla's humiliation. Anne admitted she had never wanted the spotlight. She had agreed only because the king asked, and refusing him at that moment would have left him deeply exposed. Senior advisors then confirmed, through a documented palace briefing, that the decision followed hours of discussion about royal stability. They had examined public confidence, ceremonial risk, and the danger of allowing the rehearsal dispute to define the event. A palace briefing is a formal internal account, used to guide decisions and record why they were made. Their conclusion was clear. Anne offered the strongest symbol of control when the family appeared most divided. Charles returned to his desk and placed the ceremonial program before him. He ran one hand across the altered order, then set it down without speaking. The monarch knew the procession had succeeded, yet success carried suffering with it. Anne had protected him. William respected her. Camilla had been wounded, and no official explanation could erase that cost. Outside, messages, headlines, and public reactions began arriving faster than the palace could contain them. The decision was no longer private, and shockwaves were already moving toward every royal household. Before sunset, the consequences had spread far beyond the palace gates. History often arrives with applause before leaving behind silence. As official duties continued, every corridor inside the palace seemed unusually quiet. Smiles became restrained, conversations shortened, and even experienced courtiers sensed they had entered a completely different chapter of royal life. Staff moved quickly to rewrite schedules, adjust seating plans, and brief security teams before the next engagement began. Ceremonial arrangements are the official positions and movements assigned to royals during public events. And changing them matters, because even a small shift can signal trust, rank, or conflict. Palace routines continued, but everyone understood that routine no longer meant normality. Each corrected program carried proof that the procession had changed more than one afternoon. Camilla sat alone and watched the footage without sound. She saw Anne beside Charles, heard the applause only in memory, and struggled to accept how naturally the new order appeared to the public. The Queen Consort paused the recording before the final turn, then lowered the remote without pressing play again. Her pain came from more than embarrassment. The image suggested the monarchy could move forward without her in the place she believed she had earned. Charles felt the same wound from another side. Before entering his next engagement, he stopped outside the door and pressed one hand against the ceremonial program in his pocket. The king knew he had protected public confidence, yet he had also deepened a private fracture. His success looked calm from outside. Inside, it felt like loss. Anne received messages from across several royal households. Some thanked her for stepping forward. Others praised the steadiness she had shown when the family appeared divided. The princess read each note carefully, but answered only a few, wary of turning duty into celebration. Her restraint mattered because any sign of triumph would make Camilla's humiliation worse and force Charles to defend a decision he already regretted having to make. Long-serving staff members spoke quietly through a documented internal account prepared that evening. They described the day as one of the most significant ceremonial changes in years, not because protocol had shifted, but because loyalty had become visible. One aide wrote that the procession had exposed who could carry pressure without demanding protection. The palace kept moving, but no one believed the damage could be managed through schedules alone. Before the night ended, one private conversation would strip away rank, ceremony, and carefully guarded language, changing how two members of the family understood what came next. For the first time that day, honesty offered a path authority, planning, and silence had failed to provide. Away from the cameras, two members of the family finally spoke without titles standing between them. The loudest moments in royal history are often followed by the quietest. Inside a private sitting room, without advisors or ceremony, two people finally spoke honestly. No prepared remarks. No palace protocol. Only difficult truths, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that the crown could only survive if personal pride stepped aside. Charles entered after the final public engagement had ended, and found Anne waiting without papers, aides, or formal greetings. The private sitting room offered no shield from what the day had cost them. The crown is the monarchy as a continuing institution, greater than any one person, and both understood why generations before them had sacrificed comfort to protect it. Yet knowing that truth did not make the pain smaller. Charles thanked his sister, but the words nearly failed him. He admitted that asking her to walk beside him had felt like choosing duty at the expense of his marriage. The king had watched Camilla leave without answering, and the silence still weighed on him. Anne listened without interruption. She knew his decision had steadied the procession, but she also knew success could wound the people closest to the throne. Anne told him she had accepted because protecting her brother mattered more than public recognition. The princess had not stepped forward to win applause, weaken Camilla, or claim a permanent place. She had done it because Charles needed someone who would not hesitate when the institution appeared exposed. Her honesty changed the mood between them. For the first time that day, the monarch allowed himself to feel relief without pretending the decision had been painless. Charles then made one request. He wanted the procession remembered as an act of service, not a victory over Camilla. Anne agreed and warned that no palace statement should celebrate her role or deepen the queen consort's humiliation. That promise mattered because public praise could harden private hurt into lasting resentment. They understood that healing would not come through grand speeches, sudden photographs, or forced displays of unity. It would come slowly, through restraint, private apologies, and the refusal to turn family pain into public theater. Quiet resolve replaced the tension that had ruled the palace. Charles and Anne left the room with no perfect solution, but they shared a clear purpose: protect the monarchy without destroying the family carrying it. Peace had not fully returned, yet the first honest step had been taken. Outside those walls, however, the procession had already become more than a family decision. Broadcasters, newspapers, and crowds were beginning to assign their own meaning to Anne's place beside the king. The family had reached its understanding, but the nation was only beginning to respond. Within hours, the extraordinary procession became the defining image of the day. Television broadcasts replayed the moment repeatedly, newspaper presses worked through the night, and conversations filled homes across Britain. What began as one unexpected ceremonial change quickly transformed into a national discussion about loyalty, leadership, and the future of the monarchy. Anne refused to treat the attention as triumph. She moved through her duties with the same restraint she had shown beside Charles, while broadcasters filled evening programs with analysis of the unexpected procession. A national broadcaster is a television or radio service speaking across the country, and its framing mattered because millions would understand the event through those words. Some called it discipline, others called it a warning. Camilla withdrew from public view. She canceled no duties, issued no complaint, and offered no response, yet her absence carried its own message. The Queen Consort knew every appearance would be examined for anger or defeat. Anne understood that danger too. The princess kept her answers brief, refusing to turn praise into a weapon against another woman. Charles continued his engagements, but strain followed him. The king smiled, greeted guests, and delivered prepared remarks, then paused before leaving each room. His composure mattered because the monarchy depends on continuity during uncertainty. Yet his pain mattered just as much, because the procession had strengthened public confidence while exposing a fracture inside his marriage. Historians joined the debate and compared Anne's placement to earlier royal transitions, when one public gesture revealed a deeper change in power. A royal transition is a moment when roles, influence, or expectations shift within the family. Their comparisons gave the procession historical weight, but the country's verdict arrived through one image. The next morning, newspaper front pages carried a full-width photograph of Anne walking beside Charles, beneath the headline, "Duty walks beside the king." The words spread quickly. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered behind the barriers as the princess arrived for another engagement. Applause rose before she reached the entrance, not as celebration of Camilla's pain, but as recognition of calm service under pressure. Anne acknowledged the crowd with restraint. Charles saw the headline during a briefing and placed the paper down without comment. Camilla remained away from the spotlight, while the Queen Consort's silence showed that public approval had settled around a symbol she could not easily challenge. By then, the argument had changed. Britain was no longer debating who deserved the place beside the king. The nation had chosen what that place should represent, leaving the family to face the meaning of one unforgettable walk. By the following morning, the debate had faded, leaving only the deeper meaning behind one unforgettable walk. Some royal moments become famous because of spectacle. Others become unforgettable because they reveal character. Princess Anne's unexpected place beside King Charles did more than alter a ceremonial procession. It reshaped how duty, sacrifice, and leadership were understood. When the final applause faded, the monarchy itself appeared changed, not through triumph, but through quiet resolve. Charles returned to his duties, knowing the procession had protected the crown but wounded people he loved. The crown means the monarchy as an enduring institution, larger than any single royal, and that distinction carried painful weight. The king had chosen responsibility over comfort because public trust could not survive uncertainty at the center. Yet he also understood that duty without compassion could leave a family standing together while breaking apart. Camilla accepted the new reality without public protest. She resumed her responsibilities, spoke carefully, and refused to challenge Anne's place in that moment. The Queen Consort's restraint did not erase her pain, but it gave her dignity when anger might have deepened the damage. Anne returned to her normal schedule without celebration. The princess asked for no special recognition, because she believed service lost its meaning when it became personal triumph. William and Catherine watched the family settle into a calmer rhythm. The prince understood that titles could establish rank, but they could not create loyalty. The princess reached the same conclusion. Unity survives only when someone is willing to sacrifice pride for a greater purpose. Their private conversation, recorded in a documented household account, confirmed that both viewed Anne's action as a lesson for the monarchy's next generation. Palace officials later described the procession in an internal ceremonial review as an example of service outweighing status. A ceremonial review is a formal record examining how an official event was handled and what it revealed. Their conclusion carried no dramatic accusation. It simply stated that the monarchy had remained steady because one royal accepted responsibility without demanding reward. That became the final verdict. Anne's walk beside Charles was not remembered as Camilla's defeat or as a sister's rise. It became the moment the monarchy proved that true leadership is measured by devotion, restraint, and the courage to carry another person's burden. Charles found strength without denying the cost. Camilla found dignity without pretending she had not been hurt. Anne showed that the greatest service belongs to the person who steps forward, then quietly steps back. The procession ended, the family returned to duty, and the meaning remained complete. The crown endured, because sacrifice mattered more than position. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.